Hey there, listener. Just a quick note before we get into today's episode. You might notice that there's slightly lower quality in the recording today. We recorded this over Skype, and it was okay for the most part, but there's a few small glitches that you might notice here and there. So hopefully the next episode's going to be a double-ender, so both me and Josh recording, which will mean we both have crystal clear audio. Thanks for listening.
Hey friends, and welcome back to Social Audio Think Tank. Josh here. I'm with my co-host Jackson. How you going, Jackson?
I'm doing excellently. Thank you very much, Josh.
And you can find Jackson on Twitter at
Oz Podcasts, and you at
Joshua C. Liston on Twitter. So today we're doing the iSEO-isode. So iTunes SEO. What do you think about that title, Jackson?
That's a pretty great title.
It's a pretty great title. The listener isn't going to know by listening to this, but I just did an intro for the show. Started off really funny and then went completely off the rails, and now we're re-recording it, so that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, we're doing the iSEO-isode, so it's about iTunes SEO and something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and that's, does keyword loading your show or having really long titles where you put in really searchable things, does that really help long term? And is there a chance that it might actually be putting people off listening to your show when they do see the title? And whether putting searchable keywords into your episode titles to the point where they don't make any sense, and or the author field where that's probably meant to be your name or your network name, loading that up with lots of different descriptive words that might also get searched. And we're going to, I know Jackson asked me in the pre-chat about the subtitle in iTunes. That's something we're also going to talk about. So I guess we'll start with the big one, Jackson, and that's shows that have just a bunch of words straight after their title, which I've done in the past because I probably learned how to podcast from slightly more business-oriented people than what I would look to now. If I could redo my podcast journey, I wouldn't be getting advice from the same people or the same kinds of shows, and I probably wouldn't have went out there with the intention of keyword loading my show. So, for example, I have recently changed 999 podcast, which is my straight up hobby show where we just joke around and we don't really care too much about downloads and stuff. I changed that from 999 podcast dash or colon prog rock colon TV colon something else. Maybe it was comics or something. So lots of words that get searched, and we were getting good downloads. I then changed it to more of a tagline. So it's 999 podcast colon where prog rock and pop culture collide, and that's kind of become the catchphrase of the show. And it just looks better and sounds better, and it doesn't look as try hard as far as please search us or please click on us because we've keyword loaded our title up. But even then, I'm wondering maybe we should just have 999 podcast, because I look through all of the biggest shows, and other than the name of the actual host, Monday Morning Podcast with Bill Burr, or if you had the Nerdist or Joe Rogan, like they don't have all of this keyword loading stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, well, their shows are already popular or they were celebrities before they started or whatever. I still don't see a lot of great shows needing or using any of that keyword loading stuff. Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, Welcome to Night Vale. I did see one, where We Are Alive or We're Alive, that does actually have a zombie story or something, but that's almost like a tagline as well, like a book. Would you listen to a show that had a bunch of keywords just straight after the title, Jackson, or does it actually put you off? Because I know for me, it now puts me off listening to a show if they do that.
I'm going to have to say it would most likely put me off. I think it's something that I've only picked up in the last maybe 6 months, and I've tried to build it into the titles of my shows, but I don't just put a bunch of keywords. I've tried to make it like just a descriptive sentence. So, for instance, I've got the forgetting curve, and then I wanted keywords, memories, childhood, stories. So the title is now The Forgetting Curve, Stories of Childhood Memories, or something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, yeah.
So it's basically, it's not just it's not just a pile of keywords after the main title. I think if there's just a bunch of keywords after that, I'm going to say that is most likely going to put me off, because there's sort of a thing there of it's a little bit like it's desperate, sort of. It's like, well,
definitely.
If your content's not getting your audience, if you're relying on your title and keywords and search engine algorithms to get you your audience instead of your content, then maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe your content's not that great.
I completely agree. And I think it might have started because of the success of the second generation of big podcasts, where a lot of them were in the business and health fields and that sort of stuff, where there was a lot of keyword loading happening. And it's pretty clear that iTunes, I mean, from shows like The Feed, the New Media Show, the really, really high quality podcasts about podcasting where they're talking at more network, big company level and the big stats companies, that it does make a difference. But I think that there is also a portion of people, and it might be the greater portion of people, that don't want to listen to business shows. And it's not really going to work for you to have your show that's not about business set up in a way that is modeled on shows about business. We're not against your show being a business. We just don't want to talk about business. And I don't know, I very rarely now will ever click on a new show that has intentionally gone out with that really John Lee Dumas, Pat Flynn Smart Passive Income style thing where every single part of the iTunes description, their episode titles and their actual show title and their author field is just full of extra words that people would search for. Because I think that the business crowd will click on those shows anyway when they see maybe author names or whatever it happens to be, but I don't think your average person is going to want to look up a show if they're searching comic books and you've got comic books dash TV shows dash whatever dash whatever dash whatever. I doubt that people are going to want to click on that. I don't think it's the same kind of audience that you're appealing to where they're going to look up one word and that's going to be what turns them onto a show. It's going to have to be a combination of a great title and a great description. We'll get onto the subtitle thing and maybe some great artwork as well. I just can't see that doing that going forward, basing a non-business related show on the way that business shows operate in iTunes, is going to be as beneficial as creating an amazing content and your show basically just has a brand because of the name of the show, and that's what grows it naturally. Because if you look through the majority of shows outside of shows that talk about business specifically, very few of them have any keyword loading amongst the top bunches of shows in every category from what I can see on the iTunes store. And I usually do a bit of a click around before I go off on these diatribes earlier in the day and check out what's working in iTunes. And through most of the non-business and non-health related categories at least, keyword loading seems to not be getting people towards the top of the charts like it used to. But I do see a lot of really good shows using a tagline. So do you think that's maybe more of a book author thing, a clever tagline?
Yeah, I was thinking there while you were saying that you could sort of can have a few keywords, but I'd say like 2 or 3 at most. But having it in a tagline is way better because it's more natural and it's not like a desperate grab for listeners. It's just a descriptive tagline for your podcast.
Something that's just popped into my head from you saying that if you go and keyword load everything about your show from the description to the actual title of the show, you almost lock yourself into only talking about the stuff that's in the title. Like for me on Braver by the Day, I actually had too many keywords related to health and fitness in my description and in some of my episode titles, to the point where I think a portion of the audience were expecting my show to be purely health and fitness related. And I never wanted to lock myself into such a narrow category for Braver by the Day. I basically wanted to be able to talk to anyone that's doing cool stuff. It could be anything from an artist to an athlete to a doctor to an author to a mum or a dad or an uncle or a grandparent or whatever. And I think that by taking those keywords out, as I've just changed the show to Braver by the Day with Joshua C. Liston, and I only used my middle initial, not to sound smart, but more so because I have Joshua C. Liston at Gmail and Joshua C. Liston on Twitter. I want to just keep it all consistent because I made that mistake on other podcasts where I've got a different email to I have a show name, to I have a Facebook account, to a Twitter, and it just gets really confusing. So I'm probably not going to get as many keyword-related searches, but I think that when people do discover the show, if they like the content, they're going to appreciate the fact that I haven't really tried too hard and been really desperate to get them there. And if they stay around, they're going to know that I'm prepared to be brave enough myself to just have a show that's about whatever I choose it to be about, as long as it falls within a certain range, instead of saying my show's about entrepreneurship and business and I talk about something else and then the whole audience is like, what the F are you doing? That's not what your show says your show's about. I think you could lose a lot of audience straight away just by having those keywords in there if you happen to have an episode that's not about that stuff. Would you agree with that, or do you think I'm just overanalyzing it all too much?
No, I think that all makes sense. I think there's sort of two rules in this anyway. There's one rule for big podcasters and there's another rule for smaller podcasters, and there's sort of one rule for American podcasts and another rule for Australian podcasts. But I think in general, you definitely make a lot of sense there.
I also think that, particularly with Australian shows, Australia is quite world-renowned for having tall poppy syndrome. So I wouldn't go out there if you're looking to appeal to an Australian audience and claiming that your show is about a bunch of different stuff, like you're an expert on everything about the topic through keyword loading the crap out of your show, because the general Australian person is going to call bullshit on that if it happens to not be about it. So you are right. There's probably differences from country to country that you need to be aware of or you need to give some thought to. So let's just quickly talk about the subtitle thing, Jackson. It's something that if you happen to use Libsyn to submit to iTunes with your RSS feed, or if you're using Blueberry PowerPress, there is a field for subtitle from memory in both. You really only see that come up in the desktop version of iTunes. And I'm not sure whether it's as heavily weighted as episode titles, your description, and mostly of all your actual title of your show. I'm not sure whether that particular line is as heavily weighted. But I think Blueberry and Libsyn know a little bit more about iTunes than they ever let on. Maybe not a lot more, but I think they know enough more to know that they probably wouldn't program that field in there and actually have it as part of the code if it wasn't worth filling out. And I don't have anything more intelligent to say about the matter, but that's just how I think it works, that they wouldn't keep programming that into new versions of either Libsyn or the Blueberry PowerPress for podcasting if it wasn't somewhat relevant to helping your show get found. What's your feelings?
Yeah, well, I realised it when I wanted to publish a recent episode of Films from the Granny, and I had the title the title of one of the films we talked about, but we also talked about two other films. And I was debating, okay, do I put those films in the main title or can I put them in the subtitle? And if people search for Before Midnight, that's in the main title. I think it's sort of a moot point anyway. I don't think anyone searching for Before Midnight on iTunes is downloading Films from the Granny to listen to our review of it. But then if they search Before Sunrise, is that going to show up in the subtitle and then show up in the search results for Before Sunrise? So I think that might be something I should test and see what happens.
I think that's a good point. And I didn't realize you were talking about episode level subtitles. I think that particular field, if you're looking at Libsyn, for example, actually will overwrite your network level subtitle for that one episode. So it appears in different network apps, like Castro, I think, has the subtitle, I'm pretty sure, for some shows. And I'm sure that iTunes would. I think you can actually overwrite the subtitle per episode by using that particular field. So I might look into that a little bit more, because I actually thought you were talking about the network-wide subtitle that you would fill in when you're doing your feed, like the kind of show-wide feed in Libsyn or in PowerPress. So, yeah, apologies. I was not actually on board with what you were talking about specifically there. I think that, but now everyone has a perspective on two different things. So hopefully that helps.
I can't even remember what my show-level subtitle was, so it could be anything.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I just will go into the gear quickly. I am using an MXL USB 009, which is the main mic I use when I'm on Skype and that sort of stuff. I don't have a dust cover on there. I'm just speaking straight towards the computer, essentially, and the mic is off to the left side of my mouth, kind of off axis, I guess you would call that. And Jackson, you are using what microphone are you using?
I've got an AT2020 with a homemade dust cover. Constructed out of a sponge and a piece of fabric previously used to create teddy bears, I think.
Interesting. Right.
That's going that's going into Motu 4 Pre and then recording into Logic.
Cool. And if you go to patreon.com/OzPodcast and donate $1 or $5 or whatever, I think we really need, as members of the social audio think tank community, to buy Jackson a real dust cover. That could be the first. That has to be the first thing you buy with the money from Patreon. So,
yeah.
More seriously, if anyone out there really is enjoying the show or finding it valuable, it would be really awesome if you could at least go and check out patreon.com/OzPodcast, the network that hosts Social Audio Think Tank and many other awesome shows. And yeah, if you like what you see there, donate something or sign up. And if you maybe can't do that, but you know someone who would be interested, yeah, just share the link around for that. Would be truly awesome. Okay, Jackson, so I do have one tech tip, which I think is somewhat appropriate for today's topic. And that's I heard recently on a good episode of The Feed by Libsyn. Now that I'm using The Feed specifically to do everything for Social Audio Think Tank, I guess I'm more interested in Libsyn than what I was before. They actually mentioned that there's a good chance for new podcasters specifically, if you have profanity in your show level title, obviously the subtitle, I would assume, or anywhere in the description, and possibly even in episode titles from what I could gather from listening, if you have blatant profanity in there, there's a good chance that your show will actually be delisted from the iTunes directory, which would F up most podcasts. So you don't have to be afraid of swearing in your show, from what I can tell. That it hasn't got to that level yet, but as far as anything that's public facing through the actual store itself, where anyone of any age could actually view that, it's got iTunes, I think you need to keep that pretty clean. So there's a bit of a bonus tip from today's episode. Cool, Jackson. So my Twitter is at Joshua C. Liston. So yeah, Joshua C. Liston.
And mine is at Oz Podcasts.
Awesome, mate. So yeah, once again, patreon.com/OzPodcast. Check all that out. Let us know what you think of that. And Jackson, I think you mentioned that you were still looking for awesome ideas of things you can give away to pledges or patrons on Patreon. Is that right?
Yeah, sort of products I can give away, but also content that we can give to people who wish to donate.
Awesome, mate. Well, cool. And thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Social Audio Think Tank. See you later.
Listen to Australian podcasts. ozpodcasts.com.au